Hey guys, it's Jess and welcome back to my channel, A Card Day's Work. I am going to be sharing how I created this adorable card today. If you are interested in learning how to blend a beautiful night sky background, this video is for you. We are going to be doing some ink blending and heat embossing, and we're starting right now. The first thing we're going to do for this card is a little bit of masking. I love to create detailed scenes, but sometimes you just don't want 12 layers of foam tape on a card. You know what I mean? When those times come up, I always reach for my full sticky back post-it notes. These are such a gem in my craft room. They are the inverse of a traditional sticky note, so there's a small strip with no sticky on it, and the rest of the post-it is sticky. It's a low-tack stickiness though, so there's no worry of your paper getting ripped, which makes it a perfect choice for this technique. All we need to do is stamp the images we're going to mask off onto the post-it note and then use a pair of sharp scissors to cut it out. When you're fussy cutting here, be sure to trim the stamped image right on the black lines. Don't leave a border around the edges or there will be a white border around your image after your ink blending is done. Do this for both of your images and you're ready to move on to the next step. Once I stamped and cut out the masks, I stamped my first image on my white cardstock panel. I used Eclipse Black ink from Maker Forte for both stamping my images on the post-it note and on my cardstock. This is a great ink for alcohol marker coloring, which I ended up doing a little bit of, just the bare minimum here to color in my little silhouette creatures black. But the alcohol ink works perfectly with these and doesn't smear the ink at all, which is excellent. Once the first image was stamped, I placed the mask right on top. Be sure to line this up perfectly so you don't have any white areas left over after your ink blending. Once the mask was in place, I stamped the second image and then placed the mask over top of that one as well. One cool thing about masking is that you can get a little more out of your stamped images than if you only use them as they come. Masking allows you to layer the images without the lines overlapping, which gives your card so much more depth and dimension. Now that our stamping and masking is done, we're ready to move on to the fun part, ink blending. I absolutely love ink blending and I'm always trying out new color combos to see what works well together. For our blend today, we're going to be using a few Simon Hurley dye ink pads in pinks and purples. I started off with Rosy Cheeks near the bottom of the panel, but you'll notice that I didn't go all the way to the bottom. Instead, I left myself a little room down at the bottom because I knew I was going to want to add in some black for grass. I also love the look of soft ink blending on the horizon line, so the sky sort of fades right into the ground. It's just such a satisfying look to me, so I go for that quite often when I'm doing skies. I gently blended on the Rosy Cheeks and then added in some Prom Queen. When I was ready to move into my purples, I grabbed Triple Berry, but I don't think this color was quite as dark as I was hoping for this blend, just because that pink was so bright. So I went all the way up to the top with Crown Me instead. I think this was a much better purple for this blend, and oops, I bent my paper a little bit, but I was able to save it in the end, so hooray! You may want to try doing something like your ink blending on the Make Art station if you have troubles with that like I do sometimes, just because it will hold your stencil or just your cardstock in place if you're ink blending like this, and hopefully you'll have less issues with bending or ripping your paper. I'm a little heavy-handed, so sometimes I end up having uh-ohs in the craft room. I tried to make sure that color was applied really thoroughly so it was nice and dark, and then I always feel like black around the edges really pulls together a night scene, so I grabbed my black Soot Distress Oxide and added some darker color around the edges. I do like to add just a touch of the darker color on the sides of the panel as well, but be very light-handed here so you don't end up with any giant black smudges all over your beautiful ink blending. I did also use this really cool Simon Hurley stencil, which is perfect for creating scenes, in order to stencil on some grass at the bottom. Now you could stop here and just leave your bunnies white. I think they would look super cute like this, and I almost actually left them white because I thought it looked so cool to see that white crisp color against the really saturated colors of the background, but I decided to go ahead and do the whole thing in silhouette since I had already done the grass in black as well. This is just personal preference though, so you can definitely choose whatever works best for you. I am using an embossing pen for this. Not a great choice. I definitely could have used something else, but this is just what was on hand and what I had next to me. If you're going to use an alcohol marker, that would be fine as well. But this is just what I had, and it did the job pretty well. But probably not the best choice for a marker here. I just used it in a pinch as a substitute. But I used that to fill in my sweet little bunnies, and then I blended on a little bit more of the grass over top. The thing about alcohol markers over top of ink blending, and sometimes even not on ink blending, is that sometimes they get a little bit shiny looking in comparison to the ink blending that we've done. And if that bothers you, you can always try adding that little bit of Distress Oxides back over top. Off camera, I did actually add in a bunch of little flicks with my black alcohol marker. I did actually use a real alcohol marker that time. And you can see those little lines in the grass. All I did was just make a ton of little flicking motions with my black marker, and I found that that really made the grass look a little more realistic and added a little bit more interest to what otherwise was just kind of a big blob of black. Once I was done with that, I trimmed my card panel down. I actually remembered to trim my card panel down first, you guys, before I did my sentiment or anything else. I'm so proud of myself. I went ahead and treated my surface with an anti-static powder tool. This is a really important step when you're doing heat embossing, but especially when you're doing heat embossing over ink blending. I decided not to use a separate strip of paper here. So I treated my surface with anti-static powder so that the embossing powder didn't stick to the entire background. I stamped the sentiment, "I'm here for you," in clear watermark ink, and then I poured on white embossing powder. I melted that with my heat tool, and we are good to go. I did also use a clean paper towel to sort of buff off the powder because it had sort of dulled my ink blending, and I really wanted that to be a beautiful, bright, and vibrant background. I prepared my card base with a bone folder. This is an A2 size card base, so it measures 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And then I went ahead and attached my card panel to the card base with my ATG. This is a go-to tool for me. I really like it. I find it extremely handy to just have on hand, although sometimes I get a little confused with how to refill it. I always have to go back and watch a video on how to do it. So if you guys have these and you want a video on how to do that, let me know. I decided I was going to add a little bit extra to the end here. I thought I was done, but then I felt like it needed some stars in the sky. So I grabbed my Dina Wakley acrylic gloss paint in white, and I just take the lid off, tap the little handle there, and it splatters it directly onto my background. Now you can see I did add my masks back on for this, but I think that it turned out perfect, and it was the perfect little touch that the sky needed. Just a little something extra to kind of tie it all together. That finishes off the card for today, you guys. I hope that you love it. I absolutely love the way that this turned out. If you learned anything in this video, let me know what it is in the comments, or if you have a favorite ink blending combination, drop that in the comments as well, as I'm always looking for new blends to try out. Thanks for hanging out with me today. I hope you guys love the video. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you're not already a subscriber, and I'll see you in another one really soon.